Hello everybody and welcome to the second episode of Painting Black Sun. This is where we try and finish off this pretty nifty 75mm figure. Now I won't go too much in depth with this materials and planning phase since we did go over that in the first phase. Now you can see the palette still out here. Wanted this to be left out. Now I have put some new colors out there, but you can see even right now stuff is starting to solidify. However, we can react. It's almost like taking water, say maybe on a wet palette or whatever, so you can reactivate some of these colors here. Let's see what we can do over here. See, look at that. That's just about dry. And that was, I'm pretty sure that was just the Winsor Newton oil. So you can see this stuff will dry. Now the paint on the figure, it's not dry. If I was to wipe my finger across that, well, we'd be moving some paint around. But it's a little bit more settled. I can actually take this brush and actually do a little bit more manipulation here than if it was totally fresh. I would be more inclined to just give me a nasty brush mark. Here's another example. Don't know if you can see it here, but we've got essentially just a brush strokes here. And I just faded that out. We're going to do that here. We did that wash. And that's going to be one of the first things that we do now in this next phase is start getting back into some of those. Remember the panel line wash that we described? We'll start getting into some of those. Now see, I've got right over here something that I just want. See, I can just smooth that out. Let's say here. So there's plenty of these. It's not to say we couldn't do those before in the previous session, but leaving this around about 24 hours, this is what you have to work with. I really wanted to be as precise as I could with that. I've been trying to time this up for a while, actually. So you can see, look at here, we're going to do the same thing. I really could not have done, I suppose I could have, but it just wouldn't have been quite so easy to do this sort of thing. Gotta remember to take that paint off of there, but that would have been too, that paint was just too wet at that point. See, we got another one here on the weapon that we can do. This is that the whole reason why are you using oils? This would be the reason why. Because 24 hours later I can still manipulate this stuff pretty efficiently, but yet with kind of a plus that it's stabilized enough to let me just do so. It's look, even here's another one. We're here. Look at that. So many fun things to blend. I don't want to waste your entire time doing that. It has to be done anyways. But these are our new colors here. This is left out from yesterday, but you can see, yeah, even some of that Payne's Gray even kind of on the drier side. So what we'll do in our initial state, we're going to do some of that glazing type stuff. Now we'll do some glazes here, mostly on the fur. It's pretty much, and some things here on these strappings, whatever you want to call them. That'll be some of the first stuff that we hit with some glazes, but we're also going to do some, and I'm going to do this later. Yeah, we'll wait till later on to do some weathering type glazes there. I looked at some of the other reference pictures, and they were actually, there's on those weapons, there's a lot of weathering there. I may try to bring one of those up for you. Okay, I'm going to put this over here. So again, just to show you, I think maybe if I go to the Black Sun page here, just give it a second. See, and I wish I had the drawing thing that I could do. Look at that, those weapons behind her. See, you get that rust going on there. That is the thing that I'm after. So what we're going to do next is got the paint out in the palette here. We're also going to hit this guy with some glazes. Not necessarily only dark glazes, but I want to maybe do some alternate colors down in some of these crevices too. So we're just going to be right back with that in just a second. As I mentioned before, we're going to do some of these darker glazes, and remember, just you have to get this right amount of white spirits in here. I'll just say liquid. I obviously going to keep calling it water all the time, but that's not really what it is. And remember, all you do is just, let's line one up right here. I think you can see it here. You just touch it. There's no brushing. You don't see this motion. What do you see? You see me just touching it there. And if it's not going to flow in on its own, it's going to need a bit more liquid to it, and it really does flow into those crevices. Now you see I'm using a very much a classic liner brush tip. Look at how that fills that in. See what just happened right there? I just touched the brush to it and I didn't do anything else. See how that just sinks right down? This, and we have, I believe, talked about it in the first half of this. That's the reason why you have, especially with the vehicle things and historicals, there's a reason why they use the oils as, well, pin line washes, panel line washes. They use them for vehicles because they tend to have a lot of nooks and crannies, and you can see this is pretty efficient getting into those, to the point where, let's say, and I've already used acrylics for many hours today, you get sort of used to this. And then all of a sudden you go to your acrylics and you don't get the same action. It doesn't do the same thing. You say, what's going on? You go, oh, yeah. I suppose you could do a little experiment, or you've probably seen it, maybe where water is. You can do a little experiment where you take mostly a glass with a very smooth edge or a lip on the top of it. You fill that up with water. You can almost fill it up a little bit higher than the glass normally would allow you to. It's almost like it's sitting over the ledge of the cup, like it's a dome of water on there. If you had something like white spirits, or even I would say something like rubbing alcohol, it's just going to collapse right down the side. It's not going to hang there on that edge the way water would. Water just has a different level. Maybe that's why oil floats on water. For whatever reason, I don't really want to get into explaining the mechanics of it. It's just what it does, and it's important to know for you when you're going to now apply that to your painting here. So it's just the thing you need to be aware of, just like that notion of the thickness of your paint that's on your brush versus the thickness of the paint that's on the figure. So what I'm looking to do here is hopefully, just wanted to get a little bit of the darker color there on the end. I can use like I said, I can go with a smaller brush, do whatever, but we are prioritizing these glazes right here. Now, once all of this dries, as I mentioned, we'll do some blood effect things and a little bit of maybe some leaves on the base, as we talked about before. Just get ourselves some darks in there. Yeah. Now the interesting thing is, appearance-wise, for all the intents and purposes, it looks as if we are adding all of this wet paint. It's becoming super shiny. That's not going to last long, and that's another reason why I did some of those preliminary glazes yesterday, so that you could see what they look like tonight. And like I say, it doesn't contribute to it drying faster. It's not going to act like a hair dryer or anything like that. But it's going to... overall, it reduces the amount of oil in your paint. This hair right here, it looks darn near... It looks like it's dry. It's so funny to see that. Now, one thing that can happen is if you've got, say, pets or whatever, be advised that wet oil paint's going to want to collect that fur. So speaking of people who've had pets and had to pet sit pets, if oils are just sitting there drying, maybe you put some kind of domo, you put it in a case or whatever, almost like a tableware carrying case. If it's attached to the base, obviously like this, you're not really going to be able to do that very well. Now what I'm going to do here is, this is another element of oils that's interesting. This is a brush that's essentially useless for acrylics right now, but for oils, it works just fine. It's all shredded and torn, but the oils essentially act like a bit of a, I will just say, shampoo and conditioner to it. It just amazes me every time. It's a beat up Winsor Newton Series 7. I mean, it's mostly destroyed Winsor Newton Series 7. Yeah, it's pretty much more dead than alive at this point. But one of the first things I noticed with oils is that for whatever reason it restores the brushes, and all I can figure is it's the oil that's in the paint. It's also because it gets thinner than water. I'm going to see if I can't. I've got her eyes looking off to the right of the screen here. Instead of looking out this way, she's actually looking over this way. Maybe I don't keep that later on, but it's sort of neat. Well, maybe I'll try and do the verdigris effect too. Now this is essentially still mostly a glaze right here, but you can see it's changed. It's, what would you say, there's less of the liquid in there, a little bit more of just the regular, what would you say, level of straight up paint. So I still have not put out the pure white yet. Maybe I'll just see if I can do this without having to have that stuff out there. So let's see if I can't. Just trying to get a few brighter things here while I'm thinking about it. I just want to show you, again, this is a devastated brush that I could not only could I not do this with acrylics with this brush, with what's left of this brush. I couldn't even paint with it with acrylics. The edge of it is so frayed, so shattered. And yet here, it's amazing. It's just completely provided some new life to this brush. I can do this fun stuff on the edge here. And remember, this is less about having a finished painted black sun figure necessarily. It is about the materials as well. because I'm sure there's probably even other tutorials for painting this very figure. But my guess is there's few or none showing how you might go about painting it with oils like this. So I'm going to go back to my other brush here. We'll go back to some more of our glazing. And then we're also going to do that to the dragon head. I think that just needs to be plain old darker right there. Let's see. Alright, so I got the hair in there. I'm just looking at this fur. We'll go with that for now. Let's switch over here to our dragon head. Now, our foot is going to be here. I have to remember that. Also, yeah, the oil brusher stuff that's dry. Now, the more layers of paint, that's where the sword goes right there. So there's probably going to be some blood effects over here too. They didn't really do, I mean, they did almost, well, basically none on the painted box art, I guess you want to call it. Don't see really any kind of, let's just get that right and see how we're getting some nifty little darks in there. I've even used that little tiny beat up Winsor Newton Series 7. I have done this with that brush too. And what you think of it, what is a more gentle motion? Your normal paint brush motion when you're doing, say, acrylic type things, or perhaps this. And I'm going to say this is actually a much more gentle motion, because you're just basically tapping the brush there and letting this paint just sort of seep down into those crevices. And look at that, went all the way over here. It actually went up. That's why I said the paint can virtually defy gravity. Oh, let's get ourselves a bit more over here. Again, just you can see we're only just touching it there. Now, since most of the paint we used on the dragon head here were oil brushers, I wouldn't be surprised if, like I said, not necessarily dry, but it would not surprise me to say, yeah, look at this. Yeah, it actually, see, I can almost brush over that. Now, it is starting to react a little bit. Not always the worst thing in the world, so don't be, oh gosh, I don't want you to think, oh my gosh, I can't ever do that. I can't ever have my glaze react with what's there. No, I'm doing that right here because I wanted to actually blend that little bit of a glaze. Now, I also am going to tint that. I threw a little bit of that purple in there. Touch of that again. Look, we'll just let that really seep down into the crevices. Then we maybe will take some of our little bit of my white spirits, and here I can now, yeah, let's grab this one. Let's grab this other brush, and you can see we can manipulate this. You're not going to have the watermark type thing with the oils because it's not water. Not water, not worried about watermarks. it is a, well, what would you say? Sometimes you trade advantages. You gain a little something in one area, maybe you lose a little something somewhere else. And I think as I do this more and more, I start to realize where the advantages are and the potential disadvantages. So here, so the paint is definitely wet under there, but we're intentionally pulling that out. So look at the difference between, I know that's a little bit shiny there, but we have different colors in our darks here now. And you could, let's say, just like with acrylics or whatever, and you would prefer to do the endless layering, lighter, lighter, lighter. You could do that with the oils. I mean, it is possible. You don't have to glaze in shadow areas, but with this capillary action, it just sort of makes the oils uniquely qualified for glazing, which maybe, well, I suppose in some ways vehicle painters would say yes and nod their heads, in other ways they'd say, good grief, what's going on? But that is something you just have to, think about what you will learn as you do this. Almost, I don't want to say ignore your first results, especially if they're really successful. But there's going to be an adjustment period. I don't want to say you'll struggle. But just like anything new, when I try a brand new paint that I haven't tried before that's distinctly different from what I'm used to, maybe it's not struggling, but it is certainly, there's some exploration that happens there. I have to figure out, okay, what's really going on with this stuff? So once again, I'm just going to let some of this now purple mix work its way down into the crevices here. I always have some sort of a blending brush just handy. So that is I think it's called space purple or whatever, but it's, I was tempted to grab the diazonine purple, but I didn't want to throw out too many new colors here. We played around with a lot of different things. And I'll just keep it real minimal on the rocks and such here. Let's do this is somewhat blocked here. I don't want to get too much into this because the blood effects will get in there. So yeah, let's just do a little bit there. I was really more just trying to soften up a few edges, if anything else. Okay. What's interesting is, let's say I work on the main figure for 40 minutes or whatever, and I come back to this, I would not be the least bit surprised to see that what looks so wet right here, the shininess, maybe not completely gone by then, but it would certainly be much less shiny. Now let's go into here. We'll pull out some of this. And this is what when I first started to play with the oils, and then I started to make, I expected to be able to wet blend, but once I made this sort of realization that I could do this sort of thing and almost have basically like a second crack at the starting process again, only with all of the stuff kind of built up underneath it, right? Another thing that I believe I'm going to do is take some of this This is that cadmium red deep and touch of the yellow. We're just going to make ourselves a bit of an orange here. And I talked about doing some glazing maybe with this tiny brush. Let's try some of that. Now it's not a... I'm just looking to get some red around the eye here, and that is it. Yes, that is what I wanted to do. And maybe even on his teeth there. With the idea being that I can let this just sort of sit here while I work on the main figure itself. So let's take some of this. Here, let's go a little lighter. Okay, I think I got this lined up where you can see it. And now I can even, look at this, I can put a few texture lines maybe. And remember how wet that was just a few seconds ago, and yet I can still quite easily and successfully draw these lines over the top. Now, it is not as thick, or it's not as thin, sorry, the other way around. It's not as thin, that's why it's sticking. Look at that. You would think there is no way in the world that you could get paint to stick over. You can still see the liquid that's sitting underneath this stuff. And yet it just paints right over the top of it. Try doing that with acrylic paint. That's not going to go over so well. That is not going to work super fabulous. Not whatsoever. Now I'm just going to have a little bit of lighter here. I want to see what happens with a bit of highlighting here on the edge of these scales. It's amazing what's possible. And every time I touch anytime I paint, regardless, there's some new little thing that's, I don't think I tried that before, or that's something new. So down here I've got there's no sort of underlighting here. So we're going to put some. I'm actually going to do it in the form of this somewhat purple color here. We're going to lighten that up with the turquoise. Like that. And then we're going to go back to this lighter. Back to this lighter tone here. I'm going to see if I can get a couple of these edges on these scales. And I'm still going to actually probably go a bit lighter. Let's just see. Oh yeah, definitely can go lighter. It really is handy to that. Basically, it's like the ultra thumb palette right there. And like I was doing before, I go in here and we just do a bit of smoothing because it looks all rough. It's another reason why the oils, when you really get into them and really work those and figure them out, another advantage that you have is, here, let's get some of that excess paint off of there. The ability to just basically drop some paint somewhere and manipulate it instead of having to laboriously mix a color and then place it on the figure. Oh, I'm going to go back on the other side here, and like I said, I could just wait for this. I could wait for this whole thing to dry if I wanted to, if that makes me more comfortable or whatever, but I just don't really feel the need to do that. Now here, this is more straight up turquoise, and I was really looking forward to seeing this next to that magenta / purple that's there. And now, yeah, really, boy, the amazing difference this makes. I'm going to now go with some of the lighter tones here. The scales, I don't want to say almost metal-like in texture, but these are very, on the box art, as I refer to that, they're shiny. There's a lot of shiny reflection stuff going on with the scales. Now, even here, with a video that's, well, a video series that is practically 5 hours long or so, it's something like this. I would obviously be spending more than just 5 hours on it. So this is, again, if I manipulate it and do a lot of stuff off camera or whatever, it'll look real nifty in the final pictures, and you're going to say, well, when the heck did he do that? Because I don't remember seeing it. Which is why I desperately try not to do off-camera things, or basically when I say thanks for your support and farewell, I don't want it to be where, oh, well, yeah, now I'm spending 2 extra hours after the camera gets turned off and such. So that's not something that I want to do. That could really be sort of on the harmful side for you guys, because you're going to wonder, well, gee, he was able to do all that in that amount of time. How come I can't do that? Well, yeah, it's because I sort of manipulated things a little bit. That's why when I paint a figure as part of a series, I basically just leave it go, take it to the photo area, and take it as is. Unless it's just one of those things where, okay, there's no way you could have seen it anyway, and it's kind of an important piece to just have missing. I will allow myself that sort of liberty. But now we're going to start to paint a bit of a lighter magenta, say over the top of the darker turquoise in a few places here. How about on the lower lip here? I can say this too, and I keep forgetting. I almost should make a little bit of a cover, basically one of the spare covers to the Chinese food containers or something like that on the palette, because remember I talked about the wet paint on your figures. sometimes whatever random dust particles or hair or something like that, those will find their way onto your palette as well. So I think that is something I essentially have to get back into the habit of. I think it didn't really matter because in previous things I didn't have the parchment paper as a palette. It was just the palette paper. But that wasn't absorbing any of the extra oil, and that's why I sort of shifted over to this idea here. I really don't see myself going the route of having a paper towel or whatever there, or a napkin, to just massively absorb the oil. Well, think about it. If I'm doing this on a paper towel, how in the world am I making these nifty little glazes that I'm using right now? It's not going to happen. So again, into the straight up turquoise there. I'd see the just sort of bumped into the tooth there, so restore that. It's not that hard. By all rights, I pretty much just should have waited till the very end to paint that tooth there, and I realize this isn't, we've kind of gone away from just the glazing part of it to something else. But I wanted to show you the full extent of what this manipulation of the thickness is. I want to do right here on his eye. See what I can do. Yeah, see that? That was just basically almost liquid there a few minutes ago. And I'm able to do this. It was really more of a test of could I do that, or was I going to have to wait? So it was something I wanted to see. Oh, I'm going to go even a little bit more. With the eyes here. And even, so I'm just going to drop a little bit of those and then take my blending brush here. We'll manipulate that, and now I'm just going to grab some of this. And I wanted you to see this, because remember these skulls here? While the paint is wet there, look what's happening. So I'm not picking up quite as much of the dark color, but see, that starts to resemble almost, I don't want to call it a dry brush, but it's a little bit more like that. Because the paint that was there wasn't a whole bunch of it, and it really started to dry and solidify. So we can do something a little bit different here with our paint. Now I can see that it's starting to blend, and of course as we get more wet oil paint down there, that's going to do that. But there you go. And you can see we've got much more dramatic along where the eyes are, because that's the part we really wanted to have stand out in him anyways. Now if this, I actually have to thin this down, believe it or not, to make it have, there we go. The paint will basically send you a little message, thin me down, no, I need to be thicker. It will let you know. It's not going to be shy about telling you what you need to do. Which is helpful when especially when you're new to it. So let's see if we can't. Do a little bit, yeah. I'm going to do a little bit of blending there. Come back in here. A touch like that. So look at what we can do. I mean, all of this stuff just, you wouldn't think minutes after turning that into a whole lake of white spirits and super thin down oils that we could do anything like what just happened there. But it's possible. It's certainly possible because we just did it. And I want to, yeah, I want to get a little more, like, there, we're going to just blend it away. I really do get spoiled with this. There's just no other, I don't even know how else to say it except literally get spoiled. Because I keep thinking I can do this with the acrylics, and, well, of course, the acrylics, it's got its own, it's a whole different medium. Trying to do a bit of reflection here. Once again, thin down so that it's going to flow. And I have a brush to take some of that away. And just let that maybe blend with existing colors that are there. Oh, let's see if we can. Now this is one of those things where you're going to have a tough time seeing it. I've got it actually very watered down. I'm going to try and alter the angle of this here. See, now you can see it. Look what I'm doing here with these scales. This is actually very watered down. Well, it's thinned down. I have to remember it's not water. Very thin down. Now the foot's going in there, so yeah, I don't want to do too much. Here, let's do, just for the heck of it, let's maybe paint the, see if I can't paint another part of the eyes here. To see if we can do it. I've got to thin this down, though. This is the Payne's Gray. Okay. I think you can see it. There we go. That was over wet oil paint, yes. We will try that one more time. But I got one shot at it, and then I have to go back and get more paint, because basically what I do is I just picked up a whole bunch of yellow and red paint. And that's that. That is just, that's a lot of fun. Okay, we'll set this aside now, because we've been messing around with this for quite a while. So what we're going to do is grab our main figure, and we'll do some similar things like this. Obviously, we got weapons to work on, so we're going to go back to the main figure and do some more mid-tone and detail work on that, and we'll be right back. So for the heck of it, let's maybe try a little bit of rust and patina, perhaps. Try some rust on these first. Now, I'm actually going to see if I can't hunt down. There's red. Let's see, I got a red primer here. Looking through my warmer. Looking for a rust, which I think I already have out here. That's the earth clay. Yeah. We're just going to make one out of sienna. And we're we got our ochre here, so we're gonna put we're gonna put that out right over there. There is actually a rust color oil brusher, which is right over here. So we'll get that out there too. Gonna put it, well, guess what, right by the burnt sienna, because hey, they're very similar. A little bit of yellow ochre, that is going to give us that yellow rust. And for those of you that remember the Secret Weapon miniatures, weathering paints, it would sort of go from old rust to red rust. Now I'm gonna make sure I've got some focus for you here. I think that's a little better. Now remember, this is, I even say I can get even a little more towards the liquid side on this. So we're going to go with that darker rust first. And remember, it's that whole panel line wash, pin line wash. Very just touching the brush to it and letting it do the work for you. There we go. Now every so often I am going to have over here a little reservoir of the lighter rust color, with the idea, and this is something, remember we've done this with the Secret Weapon, and we just let that sort of mix together. Look at that. It doesn't have to, so we're just kind of letting the rust do its thing. All with a brush that literally is better just throw it away if you're working with acrylics. Fortunately we are not, so Mr. Brush here has an entirely new life. We just dropped a little bit of our rust there, and now we're going to manipulate, see the edge of that with some of our, I almost said water. Almost said it. Gonna continue here. Perhaps on this side. Same thing, we just let it do its thing. Down into those crevice areas. But you just gotta touch it and leave it. You have to, just have to, the better angels of your nature. You have to not want to get right back in there and start pushing that stuff around. If you do, now there's times here where I actually want that to happen. See here, I want it to mix with my existing paint. That's when you're looking to have that happen, well, by all means. But if that's something you're trying to avoid, here I need some of my lighter rust over on this side. And remember, this is going to stay wet for a while, so I can still manipulate. I can do my thing with a little bit of my blending brush, right? Do that afterwards. Now let's get a bit of, for lack of a better term, a little bit of oxidation on the sides of these weapons here. I think we'll hit a little more here. So the rust, well, you can imagine what you're going to do with that on a vehicle, right? You're going to thin it down sort of like this, and you're going to do that kind of panel line wash, but on an actual panel. Here we did a panel line wash on a dragon head and on a spear. It just because it says, well, this is a panel line wash, it doesn't mean that's the only place. It's just like, well, you wouldn't you wouldn't put green on people's faces, right? If you're doing a portrait, but you never put green because that's not a flesh tone. And yet, people's faces have a ton of green on them just by the nature of the clothes they're wearing, light that's reflecting around, all those kind of things. We can ramp up the edge there just a bit. I'm going to go back over here to my Mecha light green, my turquoise, and then I'm going to grab my blending brush and do like that. Then I'm going to just grab a little bit of, oh, what the heck, I'm just going to mix that right on my hand. I'm quite literally using a thumb palette here. I mean, we joke about it with acrylics, but in oils, thumb palettes happen. Ooh, that's a worthy phrase. Someone remind me of that, because I'm a little bit busy to be writing that down. I will rely on Nestor and Trevor to be the people that remind me of these things. I'll give them the awesome responsibility. How's about more turquoise in here? It's actually a little bit easier for me to do it now. Why? Because that paint just had that time to settle in. So important to have multiple things to work on with the oils. It really is. I can't emphasize that enough. You know, I try not to throw down rules. It's not a rule. Well, I guess it is if you want to really take advantage of the oils in every way. I mean, it's not like it's absolutely necessary, but why not use it to its full potential? I'm just looking to get some edges here. I know it doesn't really do much for you where you're looking at it from. And I'm going to what have we here? And I don't want to get too much of this in right now. I want to wait actually till I do some of that patina stuff that I was talking about. And oddly enough, it's going to call for some of that Mecha Sky Green or whatever, or Mecha Green. It's an awful lot of verdigris there. I am going to throw a touch of that's the field green there. So the idea is to maybe start out a bit darker with that. So see on this side of the palette over here, just manipulating that. A little more of the white spirits in there. I'm just going to use this to balance my hand. And in you go with our darker green patina right there. How's about a little of that down here? But all the while, as I keep telling you to just touch it and leave it, I've got to practice the preaching. Which means perhaps I just need to get more. Yeah, look at that. Just flows right down in there. Now we haven't gotten to the brightest of the verdigris yet. So that field green and the Mecha light green. A nice little combination for sure. However, I am going to... You can see I'm getting some of this ready here for a bit of a... Yeah, needs more. So when I was working at first with the Mig Ammo, and they had things like the... I don't think I grabbed the verdigris, but the stuff for the panel line washes, I just started to notice. First of all, it had kind of a weird smell to it, actually. It just because there was more thinner in it, and maybe it wasn't necessarily the odorless fine thinner that they've got. Here, I'm going to get some of that right into here. Into my lighter verdigris. I just want to make sure that was on screen for you. And one of the reasons I did that purple in the first episode is I knew I wanted to have this, and I thought that could be a nice little foil for it. And just the patience. Wow, boy, that really just, boy, that, I'm pretty sure that couldn't show up on camera because I just couldn't see it. But man, it just sucked in that little bit of color and just drew it all the way down the whole spine of that glaive right there. Or the bracer, I mean, sorry. Gauntlet, bracer. I think you get what I'm trying to say. How's about a little bit of that over here now? Look at how that. See how that just went right into that line there. It puts the line and panel line wash or pin line wash. And now starts to give that a bit more depth. And I realize this is a much more complicated piece here, and you most likely will not have something like this as your first oils piece. Now, people say, well, what kind of... Remember I talked about the things with cloaks and that sort of stuff. However, if you're looking maybe for a specific figure, they say, what can I use? Wow, that right there is almost dry. Well, you know what? Space Marines, those... I always call them Sigmarines, those Stormcast Eternals, lots of open, flat surfaces. Now, gee, I meant to answer this question for someone earlier, I don't know, maybe yesterday. I have, and it was just through generous donations, a pair of very loyal patrons, they sent some Rubik Marines, and because I have 2 sets of those, I was going to try, and I have not actually done this before at all, I was going to try and do 2 army painting series on sort of the same subject, one in acrylics, one in oils. Now, I could do it all exactly the same and have a mix of Rubik Marines and those Zangors, whatever those are. So that is something that could be possibly happening in the basically, and that wouldn't be all the same series. It would be 2 different series, obviously. but I think it could have some real value for you to see those two, because you've seen it with the Dark Sword miniatures. I've taken two different Dark Sword miniatures as I grab some of this bright cadmium green here. I've taken two Dark Sword figures and done one in standard acrylics and then the other one with the oils in the same color scheme, right? Same figure, same color scheme, same everything, just a different material. I think that could have some massive value for you guys. And it's something I want to try. I'm just going to get some of that bright green right in there. And push some of it around. And it's stuck because my last layer right before that was basically a thin little wash. So see what we got right there? Look at that nifty reflecting light and all that kind of stuff. That's just so much fun. In some ways here, I'm kind of enjoying this so much that I am actually forgetting that you guys are here watching me. I'm just enjoying the heck out of this. I'm liking it so much, I'm going to do some more. Don't really care what else I was supposed to be doing there, because I'm just having too much fun. Now, we've got to get more of this out on the palette. I need some more sparkly things on my golds here, especially right over here. There's not much definition there. We are going to fix that. How's about a nice little line right there? I'm going to go right down the line here. And remember that option to do that bit of glazing that you just saw me do more at the start of this episode. It's always there. It's always right there. Gonna work on this side of, if you can see it, got a little bit of a blending brush here. It's just a junky synthetic brush. That's why it just goes so flat like this, because it's pretty horrendous brush, but for this purpose it'll work. Okay, a couple of tips there. I'm going to start to think about some of this fur, trying to get some lighter colors. And remember, this is where we were just doing all of that. I can still see in the crevices some of the dark. There, I'm going to actually grab some of that green color there. Now, I wouldn't suggest doing that feathered, sort of almost dry brushy stroke over this right now, just because you still have all of the, you got an awful lot of that pin wash still sitting there. Once again, back to my blending brush here. And even this, something as simple as these strapping things right here, it's stuff that I typically just dread. I go, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of that, and it is just zero fun. Here I don't want to say it's, I'm going to leap for joy or anything like that and do somersaults over painting this, but it's just a little less laborious, I suppose, when you're doing it with the oils. Just because of what I can do right here, and just because it is not really fun blending dozens of these things. I mean, I'm just, maybe someone else does, me, not so much. And if you do, that's fine, but for me, that is not the thrill of my life. So I'm glad when I can just do something that reduces that amount of time. So looking for some, I'm just going to throw a little bit of this crazy sky blue color on the fur in a few places, because why not? That's just what you do. Gonna put in a few lights here. Now, the interesting thing, now I don't know how, if it's still that way with the most recent sculpts, but at least these older Black Sun sculpts like this, they're done by hand. It is not, I mean, you can just, when you're used to it, when you've done as much of this as we do and all that, you can usually spot a digital sculpt a mile away. These are not sculpted digitally, so that the hair, you can, I don't want to say you see tool marks, but you can just see the mark of the human there, the actual touch of that, which means it'll be a little less regular than, say, one that's done digitally, but then it also has a little more of an organic look, and there's just more strands to be found. Whereas something like this with ZBrush tends to have a different look to it. Now, I think I've got to try some glazing things here. I've got some of that red and the umber mixing together. I'm just gonna do a few, yeah. Looking to do a couple of glazes in these areas, right? Oh yeah, that's better. That helps. You know what? I'm even going to throw a little bit of that space purple in there. I think that is helpful in ways that maybe don't necessarily make a lot of sense right now. So behind her here, those crazy little wrappings again. Barbarians seem to love their wrappings. So what I'm going to do, and I think in the next of it, I'm going to hit things like the skin tones and just sort of look for other, say, highlights on the fur or some more verdigris things. Like let's just say on this weapon here. I need to draw a nice little line all the way down here. And you don't have to only use beat up Winsor Newton brushes for this. I've got some brand new brushes that have come in. And for some of these future oil painting series that I've talked about, I'll certainly be using those. But this right now is a nice long, thin line of oil paint right over other wet oil paint. All that stuff is wet. If I were to just take my blending brush, I could wipe out that entire line if I wanted to. Just like that. And I'm just going to manipulate a little bit more reflected light down there, I think. So I won't do anything on the skin tone. I'm going to stick with, here, let's grab some. Oh, geez, that is, wow, look at that. That's practically dry over there. That's that gray that I put out initially. Man, doesn't take long. Basically 24 hours-ish, and it's totally dry pretty much. So I just keep that sort of thing in mind, that it will not take weeks to dry. These are all these crazy myths about oil painting. I had to dispel some more during this last week. Just people, they hear things because everything on the internet is true or whatever, and we all kind of sometimes have that happen to us. And I said, no, that's really not what happens with the oils. So just consider that, let's say, if for you, you're not comfortable, we reach the end of that last episode, and you say, I'm just not really comfortable doing the rest of this in oils. I'd rather paint the face and the rust up here. I'd rather do that with acrylics. All you got to do is just let the stuff dry, and I haven't even had to dull coat it sometimes, but you just let it dry. Let's say you dull coat it, well then you paint right back into it again. You can do that, because heck, I started doing that right at the very, very beginning, because I thought I was only ever going to be able to paint maybe maximum 10%, no, not 10, 40% or so with oils, and I was just going to have to let it dry, do the rest with acrylics. Little did I know, I was going to be able to do a whole lot more. Which, it makes me very glad that I can do that. I just didn't think that was going to happen. I'm going to throw some of that. Gotta make it more watery here. And look at this. Look at how that just sops it right up. See, it literally pulled it up. When have you done a acrylic glaze where it basically defies gravity and moves opposite of that? Probably not many times. I'm guessing not many times. That was about a little more of my lighter color on this fur here. Now there are some things like that sword there. It's really difficult for me to reach it on this pin, so that is probably something that I'll hit once I've got her on the rest of the plinth. Good. I still have some of my lighter tone here, so I'm going to take some of my bright yellow here. I have to remember, I want to essentially keep the skin tone stuff for basically the final painting segment. So I want to have some time to do the landscaping work, the blood effects. What else? And if I do that very careful sort of scumbling technique there, because the paint has just sort of settled a bit, I can manipulate that without really destroying what's already there. So just imagine, well, first of all, the bright colors of zinc, and think of you got the smoothness of things like shoulder pads and such, but if I also want to do freehand on those, well, that's something now I have to consider. How am I going to work that in? How do I work in freehand over wet oil paint? And I think you've seen it work here, but maybe we just let it dry. That's another reason why I've got so many different series running at the same time. Because if there's oils involved or just things that need to dry, heck, it could just be water effects, basing materials, icicles, whatever. If you're wondering why sometimes you don't see a series or you see more of one than another, it's just, well, army painting happens, and sometimes you just have to go with the one project while, I don't want to say while the iron is hot, but it's all about that manipulating the efficiency of things. Okay, so what we'll do is we will call it quits for right now on things like the metal surfaces, and we'll see what we can do now. Reach in there and get some stuff on the skin, and we'll be right back with that. Let's see what we can do with some skin tones in here. Now I do see, real quick, just some of the fur that could use a little bit of some highlights here. Good enough. Now let's go into some skin here. Put this over there. I'm going to grab some of that's that cadmium red medium. I'm just going to make myself a little different area to work in here. There. Because again, the skin tone has had a little chance to settle down since we last worked on this. And you can see I can actually put in this lighter skin tone here that just wasn't possible in the last session. This is somewhat thinned down. I can see I'm also going to go with some highlights on my metals too, just while I'm here. So I'm going to do that right now. Like so. But just don't be afraid to essentially let things dry and then work on them. I've got a little bit of purple right here, in fact. So this is where I can, remember I talked about that scumbling? That's what I'm going to do here, just sort of scumble this in. It's going to mix a little bit with some of the existing colors there. All I want to do is get a little bit more light onto that face. So I'm going to try, as I bring this stuff over this way, get a little more of that rosy So I hope I've got that turned enough for you to see. It's not for purposes of, say, makeup or something like that. All it's there for is the blood vessels that are there. Now, you sort of have to show those. Alright, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just... This is another reason why I have not painted the hair yet to its final degree, so that I can at least just kind of stick my hand on that. I'm going to see if I can't go a touch lighter now. Oh, good. I thought my hand would be covering things, but they are definitely not. So that right there, I couldn't actually add. The last time we were painting, I could not add any more paint there. It just had to settle. And I know it's a weird word, but it is the most accurate word I can think of. Let's think of something that maybe you've cooked on the stove, but it says just let it sit on the stove and sit covered for 5 minutes. It's one of those. That's the kind of dish we're working on here. Think of it that way. We're just trying to exert control over a medium that looks like it doesn't want to be controlled, but you really can. It is possible to control this stuff. It takes a little different mindset, maybe a little bit of willingness to... You have to be open to it, and even be willing to struggle, especially at first, because that's going to happen. It's not going to be easy. As much fun as I had the first time I worked with this stuff, it was kind of... There was a whole lot of, oh my gosh, what is this? It took some getting used to. And it's going to... For you as well. Boy, that sword hilt is right in the way. Basically, I'm just looking to get some lighter colors here on the upper lip, so just bear with me here as I do that. And on the forehead here, on this side, I'm going to try to get a little bit lighter tone on the top of the cheek here. Had to thin that down to be able to do it. That worked out. Now I'm going to take a little bit of sidebar right here because I see something with the metal parts over here that just need to be darkened on that side. So just indulge me there because it's also going to go here. Need to thin that down. Now you notice I'm kind of moving some of the paints around here. Well, that's not unusual for this phase because some paint on the palette has dried, obviously, and I need some new areas for these newer colors that I'm making here. get that. I'm just trying to solidify that. Now we've got some more of this fur texture in here to do, which has basically not been touched. And even some of that. You know what? I'm going to go back to remember my verdigris over here? Go back to some of that. Quick way to get a bit of color into there. And there. Something to set off the face a little bit. Now I've got to get some reflected light in that face. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be right over the eyes here. Right here. I think that worked. Now I'm going to try and see if I can draw a little bit of a eyebrow here. Because something like an eyebrow can actually really give some character to a figure, to a face. That's better. Can you see what we just did there? I hope you can. And now, again for this side here, I'm just going to rest that on my hand. And I'm going to just manipulate this real quick here. That's better. There's just a little more expression now, I think, on that face than was there a second ago. And yes, I'm basically wiping out all the paint that was there. How hard was it? Is it going to be just slap some more paint on that? Just boom, there you go. Done. Fixed. No big deal. Let's see if I can't. Put a little bit of red into that. I could use it. Trying to get a little more red into her face here. There we are. I see we've got to do something here with the... That's just got a whole lot of not much happening there. So I'm going to see what happens with some verdigris on that. Essentially thinking of if I can maybe get a little reflected light there. Could be good. And, you'll be afraid to just use your finger too, because that can work. Now, I'm going to go back up here again. Really, in an ideal world, the face is something I would put a few things on and then just leave it and move on to something else. In an ideal world, but here we're trying to have this video be as cohesive as possible for you, so I can't just kind of go off and do other things, right? I can't go off and start painting some Zinch Marines or whatever for you. At least not at this moment. I'm going to try and hit the hair now. Find a few lighter areas and key spots using that sky blue color. we at here? I think you can see that. And it's possible I could go back in here with more dark glazes again if I feel like I've lightened things up too much. You saw that it is possible. I can even do it just right now. Here, let's grab some of that. And that's the Payne's Gray. That just got a little too bright, and now it's immediately just toned down. And that's that. I'm going to do a couple more little glazes in here now. This is almost that dark purple color again. I want this little thing on her belt. There we go. It just doing that gives it, yeah, see there. These areas, gotta be willing to take a chance. I mean, it really is. I suppose there's risk there. Something weird could happen. And I realize people, they're very averse about, well, you know, I've got this here. I don't want to ruin it, right? And we've heard that phrase so many times. I don't want to ruin it. And then you end up with something that you're probably not quite satisfied with because, well, just weren't willing to take that little bit of a chance, and maybe it doesn't quite work out as you hope it would. I'm going to manipulate some of my stuff back here just a touch now. And again, this is stuff you can't really see even. This foot right here, I need to do some things on that. I'm working on the other one and sort of forgot this, the one that's actually sitting up on top of the dragon there. Or, well, his dragon's head. Now, I want to... because that's, again, on the dragon's head, I want to try and see if I can't put some of that same green we did on the dragon onto the foot. There is a bit of reflected light. Yeah, I need to pop a few little lights on the other side of this part of the axe head here, and maybe even do some of my, remember our rust that we had going on? How's about some here? Bit more of the white spirits. Let's pull this around again. A technique you've seen me use with the secret weapon weathering paints. Here, let's do something we would really just do with those. We're taking some yellow ochre here. Mix it with our rust, and maybe this is not quite so thin, but watch what's going to happen. Zoink right in there, and we'll let those two mix together. I have done that many times with the secret weapon weathering paints. So the idea works here too. That same idea, that same concept can also work there. Look at that, a little bit of not necessarily rust per se, but a nice little just a contrasting color there. So now I think we've had that flesh tone. That's had about 15-ish minutes or so to settle in. So I'm gonna put some more of my light colors in there. Once again, I'm gonna take my blending brush here, just manipulate that a little bit. So it's these wrappings here, I gotta do something with those, and I do believe that's gonna be some darker things. I'm just gonna see what happens with a bit of a glaze here. That's right, boom, there. But you notice here it's a little bit less of the Panaline wash and a little bit more of a manipulated wash. There's so little other paint there, there's not much to pull and move around. Alright. I want to solidify this a little bit more. It's a little fuzzy here. Little fuzzy there. Try and strengthen that. I think I'm going to take a little bit of purple and ochre here. Yeah. That just needs... Now I'm going to go back the other way here with some lights now. For this design here that's on the sword hilt. Thin down. I want some of this yellow now. Got some of that bright cadmium yellow. And I believe it's just sort of a kind of a replica of the dragon eye. Vaguely Eye of Sauron-ish. And let's see, I can see it. It's lined up pretty well. I'm going to try and take this and pull it up into there. Poof. Easy as you do it. One couple of... There we go. Don't mind me while I just hold my breath here. So that line's going to go there, and then we shall blend it around here. Like that. See another area where we could use some of our lighter yellow. Well, there's going to be more than one or two here. And this stuff is, if it dries, it's not a big deal. You have not lost your ability to blend or anything like that. It's still there. It's another reason why I want to let this dry and then that's something, along with the blood effects and stuff, that's something I want to show you. So that's why I want to leave enough time for that, because I think there's some important things you could actually get to see there. So again, just continuing to solidify some of these other little details here. I'm going to get some reflected light on that. You can see I wasn't worried about super precision there, because I'm taking this and I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to take some darker tone here, and we're going to go on the other side of this, right there. And once again with my blending brush, like I said, you can do as much or as little of this as you need. Now it does stand to reason most of the stuff on this palette, except maybe for the largest piles of the actual oil paints, those are going to be dry by the time, well, all of this stuff is dry, and then we can manipulate that final phase of the dragon base and whatever else we see here. I'm trying to hit a few little highlights on the chain. Maybe I even break out some kind of equivalent of bold titanium white. I actually do have, I think it's one of the On the Workbench episodes, where I take something that started with oils. It was dry. I did some of the dull coating over the top and then did the rest in acrylics. That was sort of intentional so that you could see how that could be done. So you can check that one out. It's one of the earlier Workbench sessions, maybe somewhere in the teens, I'm guessing, because there's 31 of them now. Alright, so we're going to call that okay for right now. And we'll let all of this dry, at least as much as we can, because I'm not ripping this off of this while all of the paint here is still wet. So stay tuned for once she's attached on the base, and we'll do some blood effects and some other final thoughts on this. So we'll be right back. So we're going to be back with some final touches here. There's a couple of things I want to take you through, and there's actually something brand new I want to introduce you to in a second, but hey, it's nice to see our figure on a base. It's actually a little bit easier to handle. It would have been difficult, though, to get all this underneath the camera, but it's all very dry. It's actually been, I'd use the Tester's dull coat. I could have used the anti-shine here from Army Painter. You've seen this before. We really enjoy this. Now I should keep it down there where the focus level is right now, way down here. She's on there nice and solid. I just took some of the coal black from Pro Acrylic, put that around the base edge here, but just want to set this aside for a second. These just came in, a whole bunch of these things. This is from Luke's APS here. He actually has, I think if you just look at Luke's APS, do a search on that on YouTube, you'll find a lot of his, they're basically for dioramas, terrain, that sort of thing. And I picked a couple of them here. Okay, let's just look at which one is which. So, here. This is the Sawdust Ground Scatter. And I think this is the florist floor cover right here. And this is the pine forest ground cover. So you can see we got little different bits of things, pieces of wood. There's the sawdust is it's colored sawdust, basically. The little green bits there. And same kind of mix in here. Now, you'll be seeing things like this again when I do a terrain piece. These will just go on there as is, because they have a decent spread of colors here for whatever theme you might want. When we're going to use these on a base, we'll probably glue these in and paint them the regular way. But I just wanted to try some of this with the sand and gravel glue. You've seen this before for sure. I just wanted to give these a try. And the idea is, let me see if I can. What I was hoping to do is, in places like this, we've got the cut leaves, right? You've seen those. But I thought, let's play with this. It might give us a splash of color down here. And what happens is we do this, then we'll do our blood effects. We'll keep it kind of minimal. We're going to go here with it. I'm not actually going to put it here. I'm tempted to, but I won't. We'll leave it here, and we'll just have sort of maybe a dribble of blood effects there and have it go out there. And then, of course, back here, we'll have even more around this area here. So I'm not going to put too much of these materials back here, because we know the blood effects are going there. But we're going to try some here in a few places. You never know if something works unless you try it, and that is what we are going to do now. And as always, we are going to find ourselves a little container here for sand and gravel glue from Mig Ammo. It's just been a favorite. You know, I love using it for the leaves especially, and for the Woodland Scenics flock. We use that, I think it was in the Lizard Man army, or not army, the Lizard Man Blood Bowl team last. I'm going to set this aside here, and that's where the beat up craft brushes really help. Let's just find ourselves one that's maybe a little bit on the beat up side here. That was about something like this guy here. Gotta get this stuff a little more room here. Aha, here's another. So that was that, basically, again, sort of colored sawdust. You know what? Let's leave that out there too. I like to sometimes just mix things together. You know, I did that with the Woodland Scenics flocks. Okay. So what we'll do then is get our brush. And we'll try a few easy places here where we know we might want some. I'll go with this. So this is not so much really, I think for color, it's probably even more for texture. And like I said, I'll mix the two together. I think I'll go with the darker. Yeah, see, that's kind of fun right there. It looks a little bit like Deadfall. Let's do some more. And what we'll do is we will, after we put this down, I want to give the sand and gravel glue a few minutes to dry. Then we will do our blood effects next. So we did this first here. Okay, it's where you can see it. And now let's try our other stuff here. This is just straight up the sawdust mix here. And it has a little color to it, which is nice. I love, see, there's a lot of different textures and colors there. Whereas the green flock, oh boy, when you're familiar enough with it, or at least when you get familiar with it, like I am and other folks that do it, especially a lot of terrain, it's one of those things where it's like cork. You know, we've talked about that. It can be identifiable as cork, so I mean, just right out of the bat, and people say, well, yeah, that's a nice stair step of cork you got there. And sometimes you want to mask what it, oh yeah, look at that. See, now it really is distinct from our tree bark texture. I guess what I was looking for was something for more of a blasted landscape like this, whereas most of the flock that I have is for, well, more verdant areas. I think we'll keep it at that. All right, there's that second mix, and I'll look at the label again, and I'll maybe throw a link in the description for you too. Yeah. So this, oh my goodness, there's a couple of the diorama style bases like the Dark Sword Owlbear family and the Galadriel waterfall scene. Oh, you're going to see this stuff. You will definitely see this. So I figured this was going to be kind of neat and fun. I didn't think I would instantly really like it so much, so I'm very happy with that. That's cool. Yeah. And it likes the sand and gravel glue. Ah, look at that. Look at that. It's fine. That's what I've been looking for. Because sometimes, yeah, see, not so much back there. Not even going to do it here because I want my blood effects going there. So this would be a really great place for a lot of this stuff, but we'll keep it to a minimum back here. Yeah, let's do a little bit around our skulls here. So this you will certainly see again. This is just the very first preliminary test for it, and I'm sure there's other things that I'll be able to figure out what to do with it, maybe even take a better advantage of it. I have actually watched several of Luke's videos, and in fact there's some things I want to do ice and snow wise on rivers and on lakes and ponds that I saw him do that I'd love to try for myself, and you'll probably see here. You know, I'm gonna hit this place too. I like this stuff a lot. I like it a lot. Gonna hit some more. Yeah, nope, that's my channel for my blood right there. It's funny because this is, in some of these areas, this is where I put in some of the crushed tea leaves or something like that I ground up tea leaves. In a way, we're kind of doubling down on that texture, but boy, it looks kind of like dirt. Because I think in some cases it actually is dirt. Oh, I think a little more here, a little more glue. Yeah, just gonna. See, what'll be nice is where there's going to be some things where maybe I want exposed tree roots, but it's really hard to necessarily paint a dirt texture. You can maybe try to use weathering powders to maybe simulate that. But this does, yeah. I do like that. So what I'm going to do then is we'll let this dry for a few minutes. We're going to do our blood effects. And I'll even get out the palette maybe, or show you that you can paint with acrylics over this, because I've never actually showed it except for one other video that you guys have seen. So we'll give that a shot, and we'll do that next. We're back for some of our final thoughts, doing the blood effects, that sort of thing. But what I wanted to show you was that you can paint with acrylics over the top. So I just got myself it's a palette over here. There's a bunch of paint in it from a previous session. Don't even know which one I was using this for, but I am just going to start painting right over the top here. You can see I can reinforce some edges here, and I don't have to worry about touching things now because the paint's dry. Right, so I can stick my hand right in here, and if I want some separation there, I can do that. It's gonna cover that, no problem. Here, let me just get some of my water over here where I can actually reach it. I think I actually have my palette upside down here, which is pretty hilarious. But what I wanted to do was maybe reinforce a few darks here. Maybe a few in here. And it covers just fine. It is basically as if all I had here was acrylic paint under this. No difference whatsoever. Not going to mess around in there too much since, let's see, look at that. It just covers right over that. Absolutely no trouble whatsoever. Now, I have even in the past painted over this with acrylics and I hadn't sealed it even. I just went right over the oils. Now, in some cases when you do that, it might have a little bit of resistance to it. It will depend on just how much residual oil there is. But look at this. Look at that nifty blue and look at that. It's just as if I'm putting acrylics over acrylics. So I wanted to do this. I know I've done it once before, and this is watery too. So yeah, don't think like this, okay, yeah, he's using really heavy acrylic paint. This is pretty darn watery here. I mean, that's about as watery as a glaze. Do you see that beating off the surface whatsoever? Now, I've actually done a few acrylic things in the hardest to reach places that just there was no way I could get on camera. I mean, it was impossible. See, well, you can do some more over here. Now, look at this. Look what that can do. I'm just shocked. And look at this. Such nice. Yeah. Because remember, the initial thoughts for me using oils years ago was to do the bulk of the blending, the shaded base coating, for lack of a better term. That was supposed to mostly be done with the oils, and then I'd take the acrylics and do all the detail stuff. The freehand, maybe painting in the face, the object source lighting, but I would just kind of bulk things in with the oils. So I know this is all about oils, but this is I think it's a really good chance for you guys to see what is possible. And look at that, it just goes right over that, no problem whatsoever. And it doesn't rub off or anything like that. I'll take the anti-shine, I'll paint right over this again, maybe a layer or two, and this will be good to go. Not going to go anywhere. It'll be rock solid. It's not going to flake off or rub off or whatever. I mean, really, what is it you're fixing to do to your miniatures that you're worried about rubbing the thing so hard that the paint's going to come off? Most people now, well, I know they use the foam cases, but for me, I use magnetized stuff. So no foam ever touches the miniatures. My hands, every once in a while as I'm playing, touch the miniatures, but I'm certainly not taking sandpaper to them. I don't know what it is people are thinking they're going to be doing to their miniatures, either while they're playing or whatever. And certainly, a 75 mil fig like this is going to sit in a display case. Now here, let's reflect a little bit of the dragon color onto this, like so. Look at that. Look at this. This is acrylics brushing on there. You wouldn't even know that was oils unless you had seen me work with it before, right? It's not a surprise to me. It just, what surprises me is that people honestly believe that, oh, you can't do this with oils, you can't do that with oils. And once again, it tends to be the folks that never tried them. And I'm trying not to be mean about it, but what aggravates me is that it scares people away. They won't try the oils because they hear all these scary things, virtually none of which are true. And I keep thinking that, well, it's like when I was younger and a certain sibling said that German chocolate cake looked like something, well, we'll just say unappetizing, with the goal that, well, I would most likely surrender my piece to him. I would wonder why he'd want to eat something that's that revolting and find it so tasty. But it's almost like people don't want folks to try oils because what if they like it? That's scary. What's scary is how beautifully the acrylic paint is covered over that. That's what's scary. Yeah. And I was looking forward to this for quite a while. Actually, all the while I was painting here. And I really didn't do much in this area because I knew after the oils had dried, look at that. And I'm just, yes, I'm going gaga over things that maybe aren't quite so epic. I don't know. But to me, to be able to combine the mediums in this way it's a really powerful thing. I'm actually going to put a little of that over here too because I can. And I could go crazy too with this. I could paint for hours more with the acrylics here, but that's not... We don't want to turn this into an acrylic painting video. I already have one video that shows acrylics over oils, and there's going to be Army Painting series where I will do a similar thing because you all have acrylic paints. Very few of you have only oil paints. Actually, I'm thinking none of you have just oil paint alone. I actually put a little more of that blue here. So that is another thing that I want to do in future episodes, is to do some of these combo things more and just have you think about it as nothing unusual, just yet another tool. Look at that. See how much? Now I could have done this in oils too, and I could have had it be just as smooth as that right now. There was a part of me that just stopped myself. I was going to use the oils, and I said, you know what? There is no better example than to just quite literally do it in front of people's eyes on camera. And that's what we wanted to do here. It's just a little bit of myth busting that's going on. A little bit of myth busting. Yeah, this is... I am digging this. I could just keep going here. Look, we got some purple here. Oh, by the way, this, I don't even remember when I last touched this palette, because that's contrast medium in there. There's a bunch of contrast paint. This could be... Yeah, this palette could be, a week and a half old or something like that. And yet it looks just spiffy. It's doing fine. Yeah, I think because I'm seeing some of the... Oh, look. Here, we'll find out if golden acrylics will cover over oils. And the verdict is, of course they do. Because they're doing it right now. Yes, indeed. The verdict, it's in. No doubt about it. I have done acrylic washes over oils that have been sealed. You haven't seen that because a lot of it was done in that early experimental phase. I can put some pink in the skin tones here. There's some lighter colors. And these are some, you can see they're Pro Acryl paints, right? That's a little bit of Maiden Flesh over there, I'm sure, from Reaper. Oh, I'm going to take just a bit of that. It's pretty tough to get this under the camera for you. I'm just trying to get a lighter color centered on the chest, to the face there. Here, let's get a couple of very light. I need a few highlights here on these. They are metal pieces, actually. Oh, what's in here? Oh, looks like shyish purple, I guess. And oh, look at this. What's he doing? He's just doing some contrast paint glazes over the top of what was oil paint. Because, yeah, I can do that. And you most certainly can too. Here's another one. It's a contrast paint. We're putting over oils. Now you know why I try not to do the whole routine of rules. If you do this or else. Well, to me that's not super helpful. Not super truthful either. Not really the best. I don't know. It is why I don't try to burden you guys with lots of rules and such things. Because, well, what's the phrase? There's an exception to that. There's a lot of exceptions to a lot of rules. A lot of those. And I think I've just shown you several of them right here on this piece. Okay, here I'm going to change the color a little bit there. We're going to, yeah, this actually has a little bit of the fluorescent yellow in it. So you could just say, well, we use the acrylic paint for some accents. That's what we did. It is, when you're doing this, and I got my hand stuck on the figure and such, it's obviously either over-dried oil paint, or as you're doing acrylics, is obviously your preferred method if you're going to have your hand touching the figure itself. So to me, that is, I really love that. That notion that you can use multiple mediums on the same figure. Who knows? It could be just from my 2D art days where I used to do, they called it multimedia pieces. You would use colored pencils and watercolors. Heck, a lot of my paintings that I did back in the day were multimedia. There were some watercolors, there was some colored pencil, might have even thrown in some pastels. I remember taking the old Prismacolor colored pencils and using Turpenoid, essentially melted those a bit and kind of used them like oil paints. Or at least like oil pastels. And I think I even mixed water with pastels. Sometimes experimentation can yield some really amazing things. I try not to, what would you say, close my eyes to certain things. I try to keep that open mind. Here, I'm going to throw a little bit of green here into some of the wood. I think that is not a bad thing to do. Just keep an open mind to things. Because there's stuff that I kind of said, no, that is not for me. That's not my thing. I don't like it. And then realized, you know what? I need to look at this differently. I can't just dismiss that. Which is when people say, "Oh, you're never going to use acrylics again." And it's, well, no, I'll still use the acrylics. I love oils. I'm not necessarily entirely joking when I say, "Oh, I wish I could just use oils and not have to use acrylics anymore." I'm not just exaggerating. I would love to use oils more, but acrylics, you can see, like right here. Look, I got my hand sitting right on top of the figure there so that I can do those. If I did those with oils now, it wouldn't maybe be as efficient because I'd have to worry about those drying and I wouldn't be able to touch certain areas. So it's something to keep in mind. Just something to keep in mind. I'm going to get a little more of the blue up here. And look at this. That is a glaze right there. We just did a very watery glaze over the top of that oil paint. Now you do want it sealed. I would say, just as a general practice, I almost said rule of thumb, but we're avoiding rules. General practice, I would say maybe seal it. I mean, you got to seal it anyway, really, when you think about it. So you hit it with your sealer first, and then if you're going to do your acrylic stuff, do it after that. Just do it once you've got a, you know, you're solid on got a good seal on it, right? So before we get too crazy with our acrylic painting here, let's get to our blood effects, because this is a long video here, longer than I expected it would be. Not that the blood effects will take super long. So we're going to get this out of the way without hitting everything. And we're going to use those three same colors you have seen me use in the past for the blood effects. We start off with the True Blood from Green Stuff World. This is sort of our middle color. It's a not just a middle color as far as value goes. It's the thickest. This is the thinnest. It's also the most transparent, but it's also the darkest and most intense. And I just used this for a couple of videos already, so we'll keep going. And this is going to be our True Blood over here. We're going to do our blood for the Blood God over here. It's not necessarily the most convenient of the three to get out of the container. There. Maybe a bit more. These are all acrylic, by the way, and this is Stynylrez here. It's the Minotaur. It's a ghost tint. Oh gosh, what are there? At least a dozen ghost tints. So that's going to go over here, but you can see how thin that is. So let's get going here. We will lead this off. Start off with our True Blood. I think I'm going to see if I can't zoom that in. I want to go... Oh, what the heck. Let's just live dangerously and have that zoomed in to about there. And I'm just getting some of the excess out of this. You know, I'm even going to go a little bit finer here, I think, with different brush. Now I do apologize if I go off screen with this, but look at this, and you can see what's happening. We're trying to stay within kind of those shadow areas of the scales there. Now let's get to the other side of those scales too, and I can even wipe some of that off. I could use some of those makeup sponges if I wanted to. Now here, you can see how this, I can smear this. Gotta make sure to get the other side. It's another reason I didn't paint too much of this down here. A little more. Just gotta make sure this stays relatively on camera for you here. But you can see there's a little bit of translucency to this. And now we're doing a little bit of... See how faded that is? It's not really obvious there. Let us have a bit more of that now. We're going to have it influence some of our ground cover. And you can see it's kind of mixing into that, which is just fine. It's not going to just sit on top now. It's actually going to mix with it. Let's not forget this back here. I mean, this is the big deal here. Another reason why we just gave a sort of hints of color back here. We don't wipe it out completely. Not completely. But here, let's have some of this start to work its way. Because it can't be quite so clean of a cut. I think there has to be a little more, oh wow, a little more blood and gore. I'm gonna have to get some on her too. Heck, I'm even gonna get some of this maybe onto those skulls. It's a little less vital or whatever to have so much of this lighter blood effect on the ground like this as it is with the snow. And this is really important with the snow. I want to say less important here necessarily. So here we go, a little more with that. And now, you can see how thick that blood for the blood god stuff is. I'm gonna just trying to move my magnifier over a bit. And the idea is to let that rock sit above that big old thing of blood there. Let's do some more. You can see how it flows, what I would hope would be sort of natural channels. And we're going to do some more here. Get out some more of this. Again, got to get where you can see it, and we will continue our... There. And this is also... It's soaking into my ground cover. That is what I was hoping for, was it would soak in there. It's almost like the... Oh, what would you say? The leaf version of my snow. There we go. See, it's kind of going down into that channel over there. Now, we can go crazy with this. I don't want to get too wild with it, but here, and we'll do some. Just going to make sure we've got decent focus for you. There. I'm even going to smear some of that with my hand. Why not do some smeared blood? That was a bloody battle, so might as well do some smearing of it. Or at least you assume it is. Here, let's get a little more there. And now, you could even let that dry too, but let's do some of our... There is your Minotaur fresh blood, and look at how dark and rich that is. It will also, it's not going to dry necessarily super glossy, but glossier than, yeah, look at that right there in that the marrow. Hit some of that. Drop some into here now. It gives the blood different colors and viscosities. See, we can make it look more, even more like blood drops here on the skulls. Give them a little, yeah, so you can have it kind of running down the sides of those. Because it is so translucent, it works out really well. Here, let's get some. Boy, I don't know if you can see it here. I'm trying to sneak some into that little channel over there. And I'm going to actually sneak a little bit of the blood over here, because just why not? And now this has had a chance to set up a little bit. And here, now we're trying to get, it's more like we're trying to get a little bit of gore onto this. Yeah. We're going to have this sort of rundown sword. If this was only 28 mil, it might be tough to do something like that. Now I need to actually go a little bit smaller here. We'll go even smaller. Make sure this is still on camera for you. Somehow, some way. And this is still the blood for the blood god, but now we're shifting over to the fresh blood ghost tint, because that's really going to get down into those crevices there. Like right along here even. Okay, and it's a nice little contrast, I think, too, with that sort of turquoise green. Trying to get just a little bit darker in here. And sometimes I mix the two together. Actually, I like to mix the ghost tint with the blood for the blood god. And this is another reason why I want to say dull coat things first and then do some of these final effects, because, well, if I spray this now, then I'll lose my blood effect. That's no good. You don't want that. And I'm just going to pop a little bit of just a little of the blood drops around. So you can see we've got, again, that texture right there. The whole thing sets up a nice context for us. Taking advantage of all the painting that we did, everything we did with the oils. Now let's get in here a little bit too. So I could keep doing this for a while, for hours, but I think we'll call that. That's not so shabby right there. I think we will call that completed. And this is, again, Black Sun Miniatures. And I will link to you the Luke's APS stuff, and you'll see a lot more of that for sure. There's a bunch of new basing things from other companies that's going to be showing up, so plenty of things to try always. It does actually help if you drop a like on something like this, especially these unlisted ones that nobody else gets to see. So that would be fantastic. And if you want to do the subscribe thing, that's great too, because the live sessions really are meant to build from these. And that usually things happen first here, a new material or a new technique that happens first here, and then it sort of migrates over to the live sessions. Here, let's see if we can't do ourselves a little, almost like there's some cuts there. Oh, I want to play with something right here, just for the heck of it. I'm really glad I didn't put any of the blood effects on the sword. There we go. That could be interesting. It's barely even going to be noticeable, really, because of where it is, and that's sort of the intention. There. Yeah, okay. So what we did there. As always, I appreciate your support all the time. for the Patreon page. I wouldn't be able to do projects like this at all. Wouldn't really be able to mess with these kind of things. So I will catch you certainly on the next episode, but we're going to be doing some more oil painting very soon. Thanks again.